After one of the most exciting and divisive championships in the history of Formula One, fans have been wondering how the 2022 season could possibly measure up. But from the disappearance of Lewis Hamilton to the amendment of regulations, drama has been aplenty in the build-up. So what are the headlines you should be paying attention to? And what does this mean for the future of F1? For all of this and more, stay tuned. First of all, will Ricciardo and Norris be able to return McLaren to its glory days? It's a question that McLaren fans have been asking ever since Ricciardo first sat down at the team briefing last year, but after a rather disappointing start to the season, hope was somewhat lost. It was clear that the Australian driver was battling the car at every turn, but this was to be expected considering how it was his first year experiencing the difficult setup that McLaren has become known for. Norris, on the other hand, was driving like an absolute champ, which resulted in a slew of comments labeling Ricciardo as the loser of the team. And it goes without saying, but this ended up affecting the Australian's driving style even more. In fact, he spoke up in an interview about the pressure he was feeling at the time, even expressing a willingness to quit halfway through the season. Luckily for both Ricciardo and McLaren, though, he started to ease into the car and catch up with Norris, even giving him a run for his money towards the end of the divisive championship. This resulted in McLaren finishing 4th overall in the 2021 constructor standings, which isn't at all bad considering how the first and second position undoubtedly belonged to Mercedes and Red Bull respectively. But now that FIA have changed their front wing regulations of the 2022 cars, it sounds like the competition's going to be closer than ever. And since Ricciardo's now used to the McLaren, fans have rather bright hopes for the future. Does this actually mean McLaren will compete with Mercedes and Red Bull, though? Well, that question's a bit more difficult to answer considering how we haven't seen any of the 2022 cars in action yet. In theory, the decrease in downforce available and clean aerodynamic flow from the cars this year around should allow drivers to follow one another more closely. And as you can imagine, this will drastically increase the number of overtaking opportunities that are present in each and every race. That being said, you have to catch the driver in front of you if you really wish to overtake him. And this is where Mercedes and Red Bull really pulled away last season. While Red Bull was keeping itself ahead with some impressive strategic decisions, the Mercedes was driving like an absolute unit. Nothing could beat the straight line speed of Hamilton and Bottas, and nobody could figure out exactly how the team was doing it. That being said, McLaren is in for a massive boost considering how it's the sister team of Mercedes, so we doubt they'll be worrying about power struggles anytime soon. Ferrari has been just as bullish about their chances at competing with the top teams this year around, and since they are currently considered to be the biggest rivals of McLaren, it goes without saying that this is the first challenge that the team will face. Ultimately, that's all fans really want. A couple of wins here and there will be great, but in the end, McLaren has to be better than Ferrari. Red Bull Racing, on the other hand, has been pressuring the FIA quite heavily. For those of you who don't know, last year saw the FIA experimenting with a new form of qualifying that was later termed sprint races. This saw the drivers qualifying as normal, but then using their qualified positions to start and finish a short race. The starting positions on Sunday would then be the positions that the drivers had finished in the sprint race. On top of this, top finishers would be awarded points for their trouble, which actually ended up doing Max Verstappen quite a bit of good in the championship. Whether this sprint racing will continue to be a part of the 2022 season is a question that's still up in the air, though. And Christian Horner of Red Bull Racing is growing frustrated by the day. He wants to know what's happening so that the team can adequately prepare for the season, but the FIA is still taking its time in coming up with an answer. According to reports, the team principal has actually sent a stern letter to the organization urging them to make a decision as soon as possible. Teams already have to deal with so many changes in the regulations after all, and the 2022 season is going to be a difficult one to handle regardless of what the FIA decide. Horner has previously referred to the sprint races as interesting events that could be made more exciting with some tampering, but in the end, he just wants a decision to be made. Speaking of changes, it sounds like a VAR-style system may be on the way, a decision that will undoubtedly drive Formula One purists mad with frustration. Video assist referees have become incredibly useful in the sporting world, with TMOs in cricket and rugby being used on a consistent basis to determine whether a play on the field was successful or not. This has helped to make up for human error on the part of the referees, who simply can't be expected to see everything and be everywhere. That being said, the layout of Formula One is somewhat different. The stewards and racing director take a look at video evidence in order to make a decision on a penalty already, which is why fans of the sport are wondering how the VAR system might be implemented. According to reports, though, there will be no changes in the type of evidence used to determine an in-race penalty. The only real change will be the number of stewards in charge of making that final decision. You see, Mercedes are still pretty bummed about how Michael Massey threw Hamilton for a loop last season, which resulted in Max Verstappen taking the lead and championship from under him. And it goes without saying, but the FIA now want to distance their new race director from such wrath. As a result, a group of stewards will instead be in charge of determining individual penalties and race safety decisions. That is, if this change is ever implemented by the FIA. We'll have to see when the 2022 season rolls around. Fans of Kimi Räikkönen will also be happy to hear that he's back in racing. But before you get too happy, just know that it's not what you think. For those of you who don't know, Kimi Räikkönen retired last year and left his future in motorsports up in the air. When asked about what he had planned for the future, he responded in the most Kimi way ever by saying that he had absolutely no idea. But after the championship was over, he decided to fill everyone in on why he had decided to leave. You see, Kimi had grown tired of the constant appearances that come with being a Formula One driver. He has always been interested in driving, and according to him, he would have actually stayed in the sport if that's all he was required to do. He also mentioned that he would love to spend a lot more time with his family. As such, fans of the Finn knew that there wasn't a big possibility that Kimi would be continuing on in motorsports, but it sounds like he has finally found a way to be involved without actually having to make those awful video appearances. As it turns out, he just has recently become the team principal of the Kawasaki Motocross Squad, who he will manage alongside former rider Antti Pyränen. So if you haven't had enough of Kimi just yet, you know exactly where to find him. Last but not least, we have some news on the Hamilton front. As you most likely know by now, Lewis Hamilton has been missing in action ever since that divisive decision from Michael Massey allowed Max Verstappen to steal the championship title from under him in Abu Dhabi last year. After congratulating Verstappen on the win, both Hamilton and team principal Toto Wolff disappeared into the Mercedes building, never to be seen again. They also forewent on attending the 2021 F1 Gala, which they were actually mandated to attend. And ever since this all went down, rumors have come to be spread about Hamilton possibly retiring from Formula One. That being said, it sounds like the British driver has finally come out to play, making his first public appearance since that loss of his. As of right now, there's still no new news on whether Hamilton will be returning to Mercedes, but since the team have no other driver to draw from, we doubt he'll be leaving them in the lurch. He still has a record to break after all. And there you have it, everything you need to know about the Formula One headlines currently circulating. What do you think of the prospects of McLaren going forward, though? And are you a fan of the new VAR-like system? Be sure to let us know in the comment section down below.